My mom texted, "We won't babysit your kids anymore." I replied, "Understood." Then I quietly removed my name from every shared account and canceled the property deal in progress. 2 days later, my phone showed 63 missed calls and 1 email from their lawyer. My mother once told me that grandchildren were the greatest gift. She said it while holding my newborn daughter, tears running down her face. 14 months ago, that same woman sent me a text message at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning that said, "We're done babysitting your kids." No call. No conversation. A text. Like canceling a dentist appointment. My name is Jolene, I'm 34, and what I did next cost my parents everything, and I mean everything. But you need the full picture first. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. Only child. My parents weren't bad people, they were just not great at the whole parenting thing. The person who actually raised me on weekends was my Aunt Ruthie, who lived out in Black Mountain. She taught me to ride a bike, showed up to my school events when my parents forgot, and always told me, "Your mama and daddy love you, they just don't know how to show it." I believed that for a very long time. I married Derek at 26. Solid guy, works in logistics out of Charlotte. We moved there after the wedding, had our daughter Harper, then our son Micah 2 years later. When Harper was born, my mom seemed genuinely transformed. Happy, emotional, involved. I thought, okay, maybe grandchildren are what it takes. Maybe this is our fresh start. Honestly, do you think I was stupid for believing that? Because it didn't last. Once Micah arrived, the complaints started. "These children are so loud, Jolene. Harper won't stop touching my things." Harper was 3. That's literally what 3-year-olds do. But I needed childcare. Daycare in Charlotte costs more than some people's rent, and I'd just gotten promoted at the nonprofit where I work. So I asked my parents to watch the kids 2 or 3 days a week. Mom said yes. "That's what grandparents are for," she told me. The arrangement worked for a while. Not perfectly. Dad mostly watched TV while Mom fed the kids and called me every evening to complain, but it worked. Meanwhile, I started helping them financially. It began small. Dad's truck broke down, I covered it. Property taxes went up, I handled it. Insurance came due, I paid it. Before I knew it, I was funneling about $1,800 a month into a shared account I'd set up for them. On top of my own mortgage and bills. Derek wasn't thrilled, but he supported me. That's Derek. Now here's the part you need to remember. My parents' neighbor put their house on the market, the old Pendleton place. Dad always wanted that lot. So I offered to co-sign and help fund the purchase. We were 9 days from closing. I had $22,000 sitting in escrow. $22,000. Keep that number. So that Tuesday I dropped the kids off, go to work, and at 11:47 a.m., middle of a grant proposal, my phone buzzes. Mom's text, "Your father and I have decided we're not going to babysit anymore. It's too much. You need to make other arrangements." I stared at it, and the thought that came wasn't anger. It was clarity. These people don't love my children. Because you don't quit your grandchildren over text on a random Tuesday. I typed back, "Understood." Then I finished my grant proposal. That night I picked up the kids. Mom tried acting cheerful like nothing happened. I smiled, said thanks, drove home, put the kids to bed, and sat down with my laptop. I made a list. Every shared account. Every payment. Every financial thread tying me to them. And at the top, that property deal. I looked at Derek and said, "I'm pulling everything." He said, "All of it. All of it." He said, "Tell me what you need." Wednesday morning I called the bank and removed my name from the shared account. Cancelled every automatic transfer. 3 years of support, gone in 20 minutes. Then I called the title company and withdrew from the property purchase. The woman said, "The closing is in 9 days. Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Was that too much? What would you have done? Because people later told me I went too far, but I was spending almost $2,000 a month on people who dumped my kids by text message. Thursday and Friday I'm rebuilding my life. New daycare through my friend Tamara, adjusted work hours. And honestly, without that $1,800 a month going to Asheville, Derek and I realized we'd been living way tighter than we needed to. Friday morning the calls start. Mom then Dad. Texts flying in, "Call us back. Something's wrong with the account." "This isn't funny, Jolene." I was making pancakes. Micah had syrup on his forehead. I kept making pancakes. By Sunday, 63 missed calls. And then an email. Not from my parents. From their lawyer. A man named Preston Guthrie, which sounds made up, but apparently he's very real. The email said they needed to discuss the withdrawal of escrow funds and termination of shared financial arrangements immediately. I forwarded it to Aunt Ruthie without a word. She called me in 3 minutes. "Jolene, what is happening?" "Make some coffee, Aunt Ruthie. This is going to take a minute." When I finished telling her everything, she said, "Baby girl, it took you long enough." She wasn't surprised. Not even slightly. And what she told me next, something she'd known about my parents for years, changed everything. I'm going to tell you what it was, and honestly you're not going to believe it. Because this story gets so much worse before it gets better. So Aunt Ruthie tells me to sit down. I said, I am sitting down. She said, sit down harder. And then she dropped it. Jolene, your parents have been collecting rent on the Pendleton place for the last 6 months. I went completely silent. Because the Pendleton house, the one we were supposedly buying, was sitting empty. That was the whole point of the deal. Vacant lot, tear it down, expand. That's what Dad told me. That's why I put $22,000 into escrow. But it wasn't empty. My parents had been renting it out to a man named Gil Forsyth, who worked at one of the breweries in town. $300 a week. Gosh. For 6 months. That's roughly $7,800 my parents pocketed while I was funding the purchase of a house they were already making money from. Are you processing that? Because I sat in my kitchen staring at the wall for a good 5 minutes. How do you know this? I asked Ruthie. Because Gil comes into the diner where my friend Patrice works, and he mentioned his landlords were real sweet older couple on the next lot over. Patrice put it together. Small towns. Honestly, sometimes they're a blessing. So let me lay this out for you. My parents were collecting my $1,800 a month. Collecting $7,800 in secret rent. And they still couldn't be bothered to watch my kids without complaining. I did the math later. Between my monthly support, the rental income, and what they already had from Dad's pension and Mom's social security, they were pulling in close to $6,000 a month with almost no expenses. Their mortgage was paid off. I was covering their insurance and taxes. They weren't struggling. They were comfortable. More than comfortable. And they told me they were too old and too tired for my children. Derek came home that night and I told him about the rental situation. He's not a man who gets angry easily. He set down his keys, looked at me and said, Jolene, please tell me you're joking. I wasn't joking. So what do we do? He asked. Nothing yet. I need to think. And I did think. For about 3 days I thought. I went to work, I picked up the kids from Tamara's, I made dinner and I turned it over and over in my head. Because here's the thing. Pulling my money was one thing. That was self-preservation. But now I had information, and information is a different kind of weapon. Meanwhile, my parents were losing it. The missed calls turned into voicemails that went from concerned to confused to furious. Mom left one that said, Jolene, I don't know what's gotten into you, but your father can't sleep and we have bills due. You need to fix this. Like I was IT support for their bank account. Dad left one that was quieter. He just said, Pumpkin, call us back. Please. That one stung. I'm not going to lie to you. Pumpkin almost got me. Because underneath all of this they're still my parents. And there's this stupid little girl inside me who still wants them to just be normal and love her the way she needs. You know that feeling? When you're grown and you're strong and you've got your own life, but one word from your dad turns you back into a 7-year-old. Yeah. That. But I didn't call back. Not yet. On Wednesday, exactly 1 week after the text, I got a call from an unknown number. I normally don't answer those, but something told me to pick up. It was Preston Guthrie, the lawyer. Ms. Jolene, I'm calling on behalf of your parents regarding the Pendleton property transaction. Mr. Guthrie, before you continue, are you aware that my parents have been renting out the Pendleton house for the past 6 months? Dead silence. Like I could hear this man blinking. I was not aware of that, no. Interesting. Because the purchase agreement states the property is vacant and unoccupied. My parents represented it that way to the seller, to the title company, and to me as the co-signer. So before we discuss anything else, maybe you should have a conversation with your clients about that. I swear I heard him write something down. He said, I'll be in touch, and hung up. Do you think I was wrong for that? For using that information like a chess move instead of just confronting my parents directly? Because honestly, part of me felt sick about it. But the other part, the part that had been subsidizing their lives for 3 years while they treated my kids like an inconvenience, that part felt absolutely nothing. 2 days later, Aunt Ruthie called again. Jolene, your mother showed up at my house. My stomach dropped. What did she want? She wanted me to talk to you. Get you to come to your senses, is how she put it. She sat in my kitchen for 2 hours crying about how you've abandoned them and they don't understand what they did wrong. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. I said, Linda, you texted your daughter that you didn't want her children. What did you think was going to happen? Aunt Ruthie is 71 years old and she does not play around. But here's what my mom said back, and this is the part that made me go quiet. She said, Ruthie, those kids remind me of everything I did wrong with Jolene. Every time I look at Harper, I see the little girl I failed. I couldn't do it anymore. No. I need you to sit with that for a second. Because when Aunt Ruthie told me, I didn't know what to feel. That's not an excuse. Abandoning your grandchildren because of your own guilt is not okay, and I want to be clear about that. But it was the first time my mother had ever admitted, even sideways, even to someone else, that she knew she'd failed me as a parent. Aunt Ruthie said, "Baby, your mama is broken in ways she's never going to fix on her own." That's not my problem to fix, Aunt Ruthie. No, it's not. But it might be your problem to understand. I didn't like hearing that. I still don't, honestly. So here's where things take another turn. Remember Preston Guthrie? Apparently after our phone call he did some digging. And what he found made the Pendleton rental situation look small. Because it turns out my father had also applied for a low-income home repair grant through the county. The same type of grant, by the way, that my nonprofit helps people apply for. Dad claimed the household income was under $30,000 a year. But with my monthly payments, the rental income, his pension, and Mom's Social Security, they were making nearly double that. That's fraud. Not technically fraud. Actual fraud. And guess how I found out? Preston Guthrie called me back. Not as my parents' lawyer this time, he dropped them as clients. He called because, in his words, "I felt an ethical obligation to inform you of what I discovered during the course of reviewing their financial documents." I was standing in the cereal aisle at Harris Teeter when I got that call. I just stood there holding a box of Cheerios, listening to this lawyer tell me my father committed grant fraud. Micah tugged on my jacket and said, "Mama, I want the one with the marshmallows." "Sure, baby. Whatever you want." I drove home on autopilot. I called Derek and told him. He was quiet for a long time and then said, "Do your parents know that you know?" "Not yet." "Jolene, what are you going to do with this?" And that's the question, right? Because I had the rental secret. I had the fraud. I had 3 years of financial records showing everything I'd given them. I could have buried my parents. Legally, financially, completely. One call to the county grants office and Dad's looking at charges. But these are my parents. The same people who, for all their faults, did keep a roof over my head. The same dad who called me pumpkin on a voicemail and couldn't sleep. The same mom who held Harper the day she was born and cried happy tears. What would you do with that kind of power over people you're supposed to love? I'll tell you what I did. And I'll tell you about the conversation that finally happened. Face to face, no lawyers, no texts, no hiding. It's coming. And it broke me in ways I didn't think were still possible. I drove to Asheville on a Saturday. Alone. Derek offered to come, but I said no. This was something I had to do by myself. I left the kids with Tamara, got in the car at 6 a.m., and drove 2 hours in complete silence. No music, no podcast, nothing. Just me and the road and this knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 8:15. The house looked the same. Dad's truck in the yard, Mom's little flower bed along the walkway, the porch swing they never sit on. Everything normal. Everything a lie. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. Almost drove away twice. But then I saw the curtain in the front window move and I knew Mom had seen me. No turning back. She opened the door before I got to the porch. She looked terrible. I don't say that to be mean. I mean she looked like she hadn't slept in 2 weeks. Her hair was flat, no makeup, wearing the same old cardigan she wore when I was in high school. She said, "Jolene," and her voice cracked on the second syllable. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table. He stood up when I walked in, then sat back down, then stood up again. He didn't know what to do with his hands. Neither did I, honestly. Nobody spoke for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. So I started. "Sit down, both of you. I have things to say and you're going to listen before you respond." Mom sat. Dad sat. I stayed standing. Not to be dramatic. My legs just wouldn't let me sit. 3 years. I have been putting $1,800 a month into your lives. I paid your truck repair, your insurance, your property taxes. I put $22,000 into escrow for a house you told me was vacant. And I did all of that while working full-time, raising 2 kids and asking you for one thing in return, to watch Harper and Micah a few days a week. One thing. Mom opened her mouth. I held up my hand. "I'm not done." He sent me a text, Mom. A text message on a Tuesday in the middle of my workday, telling me you were done with my children. Not asking to talk. Not saying you needed a break. Done. Like returning a sweater that didn't fit. Dad was staring at the table. Mom was crying silently, which she's always been good at. And then, I find out about Gil Forsyth. Dad's head snapped up. "Yeah, Dad. I know about the rental. $300 a week cash for 6 months on a property you told me was empty. A property I was paying to buy for you. Jolene, that was..." Dad started. "I'm still not done. I also know about the grant, Dad." The room went dead silent. And I watched my father's face change. Not anger. Not defiance. Something worse. Shame. Real shame, the kind that sits behind your eyes and makes you look like a completely different person. He put his hands flat on the table and stared at them like they belonged to someone else. Mom looked at him. What grant? Leonard, what is she talking about? So Mom didn't know. That was unexpected even for me. Dad applied for a low-income home repair grant through the county, I said. He reported your household income at under $30,000. Which, considering what I was sending you every month plus skills rent plus your pension and social security, is not even close to accurate. Mom turned to Dad with this expression I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, more like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. She said very quietly, Leonard, what did you do? Dad didn't answer. He just sat there, jaw working, eyes red. And you know what? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because watching your 62-year-old father look like a kid caught stealing is not something you're ever prepared for, no matter how angry you are. I sat down. Finally. My legs gave out anyway. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm not going to report the grant. I'm not going to take legal action over the rental income. I have everything documented. But I'm not going to do that because, despite everything, you are still my parents and I don't want to destroy you. Mom was full-on sobbing now. But the money is done. The shared accounts are closed. The property deal is dead. And until you can look me in the eye and tell me, honestly, why you treated my children like a burden, we have nothing to talk about. I stood up and walked toward the door. That was my exit. Clean, clear, done. Except Mom said something that stopped me. Jolene, I was jealous. I turned around. What? She wiped her face with the sleeve of that old cardigan. I was jealous of you. Of how good you are with them. Harper and Micah, they adore you. They run to you. They light up when you walk in the room. And when I watched you with them, all I could think was, I never did that. You never ran to me. And it was my fault, and I knew it was my fault, and I couldn't stand being around the proof of it every single day. Have you ever had someone say something to you that made you furious and heartbroken at the exact same time? Because that's what that was. She pushed my children away because she was jealous that I was a better mother than she ever was. That's not an excuse. That is an explanation, and there's a difference, and I need you to understand I know the difference. But it cracked something open. Dad finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. I did the grant because I was scared, Jolene. Your money, I knew it wouldn't last forever. I knew someday you'd wake up and realize we didn't deserve it. So I was trying to get ahead of it. Squirrel things away. The rental, the grant. It was all because I was terrified of the day you stopped taking care of us. He paused. And then we made that day happen ourselves. I stood in my parents' doorway with my car keys in my hand and tears running down my face. And for the first time in maybe my entire life, all three of us were being honest at the same time. No performance. No guilt trips. Just three broken people in a kitchen in Asheville finally saying the true thing. I didn't forgive them that day. I want to be clear about that. I said, I hear you. I need time. And I left. I cried the whole way home. Called Aunt Ruthie from the car. He just listened. When I was done, she said, that's the hardest part over, baby girl. The rest is just deciding what comes next. The next few weeks were strange. Quiet. My parents didn't call, which was actually harder than the 63 missed calls. At least the calls meant they were fighting for something. The silence felt like giving up. But then something small happened. I got a card in the mail. Not from Mom, from Dad. Handwritten, which my father has never done in his life. His handwriting looked like a doctor's, barely legible, but I made it out. Jolene, I called the county and reported myself on the grant. I'm paying it back. I told Gil he needs to find another place by the end of the month. I don't know if any of this matters, but I'm trying. Love, Dad. He reported himself. Nobody made him. Nobody threatened him. He just did it. I showed Derek. He read it twice, set it down, and said, well, that's something. Yeah, that was something. A week later, Mom sent me a letter. Not a text, a real letter, 3 pages handwritten. She talked about her own mother, my grandma Eileen, who apparently was the same way, cold, distant, critical. Mom said she spent her whole life trying not to be Grandma Eileen and ended up becoming her anyway. She said she didn't know how to break the cycle, but she wanted to learn. She asked if I would consider family counseling. She said she'd already looked into therapists in Charlotte so she and Dad could come to me, so I wouldn't have to disrupt my life any more than they already had. He came to me. Not the other way around. I didn't respond right away. I sat with it for another week. Talked to Derek, talked to Aunt Ruthie, talked to Tamara. Everyone said the same thing in different words. This is your choice and no one gets to make it for you. So I made it. I called my mom on a Sunday evening. Harper was in the background yelling about something, I don't even remember what, and Micah was singing a song he made up that was just the word, banana, over and over. Real life. Messy, loud, beautiful. Mom, I'll try the counseling. But I have conditions. You come to Charlotte. You don't babysit until the therapist says we're ready. And if Dad ever lies to me about money again, we're done. Permanently. She said okay to all of it. She was crying again, but it sounded different this time. Not guilty crying. Relieved crying. Maybe even hopeful. We started therapy the following month. Dr. Anita Walsh, family counselor, office in South Charlotte with too many throw pillows. The first session was awful. Mom cried, Dad stared at the floor, and I sat there with my arms crossed like a teenager. But we went back. And we kept going back. It's been 10 months now. My parents drive to Charlotte every other Saturday. Dad plays with Micah in the backyard. Actually plays, not just sits nearby. Mom is learning to talk to Harper like a person and not a project. It's not perfect. Some sessions are brutal. But we show up. Last month, Harper made a card at school for Grandparents' Day. She drew 4 stick figures. Her, Micah, Grandma and Grandpa, standing in front of a yellow house with a big sun. She wrote, "I love my family," in wobbly letters. Mom put it on her fridge. Sent me a photo. No caption, just the picture. I sent back a heart emoji. 1 heart. That was enough. Aunt Ruthie came to visit last weekend. She sat on my porch, drank sweet tea and watched my parents chase my kids around the yard. She looked at me and said, "See, baby girl? Sometimes the people who break your heart are the same ones who learn how to fix it." I don't know if my parents are fully fixed. I don't know if any of us are. But they're trying and I'm letting them, and that's more than I thought I'd ever be able to say. So that's my story. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I mean that. It means more than you probably realize. If you like this, drop a like and maybe share it with someone who needs to hear that setting boundaries isn't the same as giving up on people. And if you didn't like something or you think I was wrong somewhere, tell me in the comments. I'm not fragile. I handled 63 missed calls and a lawyer named Preston Guthrie. I can handle your opinions. Thank you for watching. Seriously. Take care of yourselves, take care of your people, and don't let anyone, not even family, make you feel guilty for knowing your own worth.